Last week, I stood outside my parents' house in the freezing wind, just staring at the front door like it was some kind of gate to hell. The house looked exactly the same wreath on the door, over-decorated porch, but everything else had shifted. The whole dynamic, the whole damn truth. And honestly, all I could think was, WTF did I ever do to deserve this kind of treatment? Okay, rewind a bit. I'm Jamie, 33. I run a small independent bike shop in Portland. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I built it from the ground up. Early mornings, late nights, scraped knuckles, and way too many instant noodles. But hey, it's profitable. More importantly, it's honest work. My family, that's a whole other story. My parents live in a leafy suburb 2 hours away, same house I grew up in. And then there's Leo, my younger brother by 3 years. The golden boy. You know the type, big smile, bigger screw-ups. Somehow, every disaster he creates ends up being my responsibility. Growing up, if he broke something, I fixed it. If he failed something, I helped. And if he lied, well, I misunderstood. I played the role, the fixer, the reliable one, but deep down I was done years ago. Anyway, a year ago, Leo started his own consulting firm. Whatever the hell that means, he called it eco-strategic branding or some crap. What he really did was throw buzzwords around to get investor money and burn through it on Airbnbs, Instagram models, and overpriced whiskey. I warned my parents early, told them this thing smelled fishy. They didn't listen. No worse, they told me I was being jealous. Let's fast forward to 2 months ago. My shop's doing well. I've just paid off my last loan. Things are looking up. And then I get the call. Jamie, we need to talk. I knew the tone. It was Mom's, we need to talk about how you're disappointing us again tone. Leo's hit a bit of a cash crunch. She says, all fake calm. Define bit, I asked. Only around $400,000. I laughed. I genuinely thought it was a joke. We think, she continued, you should sell your shop. It's just property. Right? Leo's building something for the future. The family's future. I swear to God, I blacked out for a second. You want me to sell my business, the one thing I built on my own, to bail him out of another mess? It's not a mess, Dad cut in. It's a rough patch, and we support each other in this family. I wanted to scream. Instead, I hung up. I couldn't even find words. A week later, Thanksgiving invite arrives. No apology, no acknowledgement of what they asked me, just a bland 2 p.m. Don't be late. So yeah, I showed up. Not because I wanted turkey or family bonding. I showed up because I had something to say. And let me tell you, nothing prepared them for what I brought. So, I pull into the driveway, the same driveway where I learned to ride a bike, where I scraped my knees 100 times growing up, and they're already outside. Not to greet me, not to hug me. To block me. Dead serious, my parents were standing there, arms crossed, like they were bouncers at a damn nightclub. Leo's nowhere in sight. Dad's the first to speak. Jamie, before you come in, we need to have a conversation. My blood pressure instantly spiked. I already knew this wasn't going to be a warm family gathering, but I wasn't expecting them to hit me with the full-on exile treatment right out the gate. You refused to help your brother, Dad said, tone icy. You chose your business over your family. That makes your position here complicated. Complicated, I repeated, staring at him like he'd grown another head. You're not welcome here today. Mom chimed in, softer, but still cold. Not until you understand what it means to put the family first. I blinked, stunned. No one was yelling. No big dramatic meltdown. Just stone-faced rejection. I was their son, their firstborn, and because I wouldn't torch my life for Leo's mess, they were cutting me out. I laughed, not because it was funny, it was either that or scream. You're serious, I said, more to myself than them. You're really doing this. Dad shrugged. We've made our decision. We're giving Leo full access to the family assets. That includes the inheritance. You've made it clear you don't want to be part of this family. I swear, my heart didn't even break at that point. It just hardened. Because here's what they didn't know I'd been preparing for this day. After that $400K call, I started digging. I didn't want to, but something about how calmly they asked me to sacrifice everything for Leo, it didn't sit right. So I called a friend from college, someone who worked in financial fraud investigations, gave her the name of Leo's company. She called me back a few days later. Jamie, she said, this thing it's sketchy as hell. Turns out Leo's firm wasn't just failing, it wasn't even real. Like, literally. No licenses, no records, just some thrown-together website, some fake testimonials, and a bunch of shady shell accounts funneling money. Want to guess whose name was on the PayPal link used to collect investor deposits? Mine. Leo used my name on some back-end sign-up forms probably years ago, back when I helped him with basic stuff. Not realizing what I was enabling, he must have linked my info without permission. So not only was I being asked to bail him out, I was already implicated. That night, I filed a report, and then I started compiling every receipt, every text, every voicemail, especially the ones where my parents pressured me to think about Leo's future and be loyal. Now, standing there on the front lawn, hearing them disown me like it was some rational move, I knew I wasn't just walking away. I was pulling the pin on the grenade. I didn't say much. Just took a breath, reached into my coat pocket, and handed Dad a sealed manila envelope. What's this? He asked, not opening it. Proof, I said. They didn't open it right then. They just stared at me like I'd gone insane. Leo's not in trouble because I didn't help. I added, he's in trouble because he's a fraud, and you helped cover it up. Mom's face went pale, like blood drained, statue-level pale. You need to leave, she said quickly, her voice shaking for the first time. I turned without a word and walked back to my car. Inside, my hands were trembling with adrenaline, with heartbreak, with fury, but mostly relief. Because for the first time in forever, I wasn't carrying their baggage anymore. And I wasn't done, not even close. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, too quiet. No music, no podcast, just me, gripping the steering wheel like it was keeping me from falling apart. I kept replaying the scene, my parents, stone-faced, cutting me out like I was some inconvenience, like the problem wasn't Leo torching his life and dragging everyone else with him, but me for not offering up my neck for the blade. Screw that. I got home and tossed my keys onto the counter. My place smelled like coffee and old book safe. Familiar. 100 times more home than the house I grew up in. I sat down on the couch, pulled out my laptop, and opened the folder I'd started backup plan. I'd been compiling stuff for weeks just in case things went south, and oh boy, did they ever! Recordings, screenshots, that envelope I gave Dad, just a decoy. I had the real stuff saved and backed up 3 times over. There was one audio file I hadn't listened to since I recorded it, a call from a few weeks back. Leo had butt-dialed me, yeah, that actually happens, and I caught about 3 minutes of him talking to someone named Brett. Dude, Leo had said, voice cocky and loud, I just used Jamie's info again. He's so ******ing naive. As long as I throw in some family guilt, he folds every time. I remember hearing that and feeling numb. That's when I knew. This wasn't a brother in trouble. This was a con man who happened to share my last name. I sent that clip to my lawyer the next day. Yes, I had a lawyer. Don't look so shocked. His name's Jordan. Young guy. Sharp as hell. No nonsense. He'd been helping me quietly ever since I suspected things were going sideways. Jordan didn't sugarcoat anything. "Jamie," he said, "if your brother used your name and financial info without consent, and funds were collected under false pretenses, that's fraud. You've got enough here to trigger a full investigation." He paused. "And if your parents knew even vaguely that he was misleading people and still pressured you to sell your store to fund him, that could open up a whole new set of issues." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. "You ready to push this?" he asked. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm done playing dumb. Let's light it up." The next morning, Jordan filed the official report. I made an anonymous tip to the state's Financial Crimes Division, attaching the folder with everything audio, text chains, bank screenshots, all of it. I wasn't going to sit around and hope karma did its job. I was the karma now. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Officer Daniels from the White Collar Crimes Unit. "We've reviewed your evidence," he said, calm and professional. "You've done most of our work for us. I'd like to schedule a formal statement. This is substantial." I felt a weird, shaky mix of emotions: relief, rage, vindication, fear. Like, holy hell, this was really happening. Later that night, I got a text from Leo. No apology, no attempt to fix things. "Just hope you're happy. You're about to destroy this family." I stared at that screen for a long time. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. So many words burning in my chest, but in the end, I just blocked his number. You don't get to throw gasoline for years and then cry when the fire reaches your house. The next week, I kept my head down, worked at the cafe, helped a kid pick out her first chapter book, brewed espresso for an old couple who came in every Saturday. Regular life. Until I walked in one morning and saw 2 detectives at the counter asking for me. They weren't there to arrest me, thank God, but they had questions, clarifications. They said the tip I sent had led to several other complaints. People had come forward. One of them, a woman named Cassie, who said she invested $20K with Leo after seeing a fake endorsement video he made using footage from my store, footage I didn't even know he had used. He'd used my face, my store, my damn voice to convince people he was legit. And that's when I stopped feeling conflicted. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was theft, exploitation, and I wasn't the only one. I gave the detectives everything they asked for. And when they left, I locked myself in the back room and finally let myself fall apart. Sat on the floor, cried like a kid, because this wasn't just about business. This was about betrayal, about years of being the good one, the backup, the reliable son who never asked for anything and got less than that in return. I'd tried so damn hard to earn a spot in a family that only saw me as useful until I stopped being useful. But now they were about to see what happened when I stopped being silent too. A few days later, the first article dropped. It was just a small piece in a local business blog. Portland startup faces allegations of fraud, but Leo's name was in it. So was mine. And the phrase, multiple reports filed. That was the first real crack in his armor. You could practically hear the collective weight. What from everyone in our circle? The next day, I got a call from my Aunt Patty. She never calls, like ever. "Jamie," she whispered, like she was sneaking a phone call from a bunker. I read the article. "What's going on?" I debated for half a second, but I was tired of hiding. So I told her. All of it. Her silence on the other end was louder than anything she could have said. And when she finally did speak, it wasn't with pity. It was with something closer to fury. "I always knew something was off with that boy," she muttered. "And your parents? Jesus, I'm sorry, kid." That was the first of several unexpected calls. Turns out, when you shine a light on a lie that big, you're not the only one who's been burned by it. A few cousins reached out, one old friend of my mom's. Even a former teacher from high school messaged me on Facebook, "Proud of you, Jamie. Families are supposed to protect each other." I wasn't expecting support. I really wasn't expecting people to start choosing me, but they did. Not everyone, though. The people who were loyal to my parents, oh, they doubled down hard. I saw the Facebook posts, sometimes loyalty means making hard choices for the family. Certain people forget who fed them and gave them everything. Subliminal digs, passive-aggressive memes, you name it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because the facts were doing the work for me. Meanwhile, the investigation into Leo was heating up. Officer Daniels called me again, said they were building a strong case, multiple victims, misuse of identity, wire fraud. "Do you think he knew what he was doing?" I asked him. Long pause. "Oh, he knew," Daniels said. "You don't accidentally set up this many shell accounts. This was intentional, premeditated." Something broke inside me in that moment. Not like a snap, more like a slow, final unraveling of the last thread of brotherly hope I didn't even realize I was still holding on to. Because for a while, I'd let myself believe Leo was just lost, immature, trying and failing, that maybe he really thought this would work and got in too deep. But no, he knew, and worse, he used me as a human shield. That night, I opened an old photo album, flipped through shots of us as kids, camping trips, Christmas mornings, us building a blanket fort in the living room. All fake. At least to him. I slammed it shut and threw it under the bed. I didn't need reminders. I needed closure. I was in my shop the following weekend when it happened. Leo showed up. He didn't come in, just stood outside, in a hoodie and sunglasses like some B-list celebrity trying to avoid TMZ. I saw him through the window. Our eyes met. I went to the door, opened it just a crack. "Why are you here?" I asked. He pulled the sunglasses off. His eyes were bloodshot, voice hoarse. "They're coming after me, man." "No shit," I said. "You stole money from a dozen people. You used my identity. What did you think would happen?" "I didn't mean..." "Don't..." I cut him off. "Don't even try that line. I heard the recording. Leo, you bragged about using my info." He looked down at his shoes. "Scuffed up Nikes, I'm scared." I almost felt a flicker of something, but it wasn't compassion. It was pity, disgust, maybe both. "You should be," I said quietly, "and you should get a lawyer." He looked up again, his face twisted. "You really did it. You turned on me." "No, Leo, you turned on me. I just stopped letting you get away with it." And then I closed the door, locked it, watched him walk away. I stood there for a long time, forehead against the glass, heart pounding. That was it, the confrontation I never thought I'd get. No yelling, no apology, just two brothers on opposite sides of a decision neither one could undo. That night, I slept better than I had in months. 3 weeks later, Leo was arrested. It didn't make headlines, not the big ones. Anyway, but the local paper ran it, right under a story about a Thanksgiving canned food drive. Startup founder accused of wire fraud, identity theft. There was a grainy photo of him getting into a police car, hoodie up, face turned away. My parents must have seen it, maybe even cut it out and stuffed it in a drawer, hoping they could pretend it wasn't real. I didn't call them, they didn't call me, but they called everyone else. My cousin Nina forwarded me a screenshot of a message Mom sent the whole extended family on some group thread I haven't been part of in years. It read, "Please keep Leo in your prayers. He's going through a difficult time. Some people, including family, have chosen to hurt him when he needed support. We ask for privacy and respect. I laughed so hard I almost dropped my phone. Privacy and respect from the people who literally told me I wasn't their son because I wouldn't sell my business to save their golden boys Ponzi scheme. Sure. Jordan called the next day. They're pushing a plea deal. Sounds like Leo's lawyer is trying to shave years off the sentence by offering cooperation. Cooperation with who, I asked. Probably investors, maybe the feds, if the money crossed state lines. He paused. He's going to jail. Jamie, there's no way around it now. And just like that, it was real. Not just some theoretical revenge arc, not just some satisfying I told you so moment. This was prison. This was court dates and real victims and financial restitution. This was a man I used to build tree houses with, wearing an orange jumpsuit and being fingerprinted. I didn't feel good about it. I didn't feel bad either. Mostly, I just felt done. That weekend, I closed the shop early, sat in the back office with a coffee, and started writing everything down. Not for legal reasons for myself, for closure. I needed to see it on paper. Every step, every manipulation, every moment I swallowed my anger just to keep the peace. The way they praised Leo for existing while I had to earn every scrap of acknowledgement. The way my parents called me selfish for building something on my own. The way they made loyalty a one-way street. By the time I finished, it was midnight, and I felt lighter than I had in years. The next day, I sent a letter to my parents. Not an angry one, not a plea either, just the truth. I told them what Leo had done and what they'd done by enabling it. I told them I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't coming back. You didn't lose a son, I wrote. You gave him away. You just didn't expect me to notice. I didn't expect a response. I didn't get one. But a few weeks later, I heard from their neighbor, Mrs. Halprin, sweet lady, used to bring us cookies as kids. She stopped by the shop while I was restocking new bike gear. They've been quiet lately, she said, eyes soft. A lot of people are asking questions. They're not handling it well. I nodded. Hi. I just wanted to tell you, she added. Some of us see you. We always did. That stuck with me. We always did. Maybe not everyone believed their version of the story. Maybe not everyone was fooled. That Christmas, I didn't go to the big family dinner. I made lasagna with a couple of friends instead. We drank too much wine, watched dumb movies, and stayed up until 3 a.m., arguing about which cereal is most overrated. It's cornflakes. Fight me. And for the first time in forever, I didn't miss the performance of holiday happiness. I didn't feel that ache to be accepted. I was good. No, I was great. Because even though they kicked me out of the house, even though they cut me out of the will, even though they tried to weaponize guilt and shame and bloodlines, I still had everything that mattered. My peace, my truth, my name. And they had a headline. A few months passed. Winter melted into spring. My shop got busier, warmer weather. More bikes, more coffee, more people. Life moved on. Leo, he pled guilty, took the deal, got 5 years. They tried to spin it. Of course, my parents told some folks he was taking the fall for other people, that it was all a misunderstanding, that the system's not fair. But nobody bought it anymore. Because the community started talking, and not in whispers. Real talk, at the grocery store, at the coffee shop, people knew what happened. They knew he wasn't just a failed businessman, he was a liar, a thief. And I wasn't just the brother who said no, I was the guy who told the truth when it wasn't easy. My parents stopped showing up at social events. Dad resigned from his club. Mom stopped posting those curated Facebook updates with inspirational quotes and filtered brunch photos. Their perfect little image cracked, shattered. And it wasn't because I exposed them. It was because they built it on a lie. Funny how that works. One night, I was closing up the shop when I found an envelope under the door. No name, just taped shut with a single word written in my mom's handwriting. Sorry. Inside, there was a letter. Short, no excuses, no dramatic apology. Just, we didn't see you. I'm sorry we didn't see you. You didn't deserve any of it. It wasn't much, but it was something. I sat there for a long time, staring at those words, letting them hit. They didn't fix things, they didn't change the past. But they did confirm what I already knew they were wrong. It was the first honest thing they'd said to me in years. I didn't write back. Some bridges don't need rebuilding, they just need to stay burned. And I was okay with that. These days, my life is small, simple, and I love it. I run the shop, I teach a local bike safety course on weekends, I host trivia nights at the coffee bar on Thursdays. People know my name, not because I'm flashy, because I show up. I'm not someone's afterthought anymore. I'm not someone's emotional ATM or backup plan. I'm me. And that's enough. Sometimes I think back to that day standing outside the house, hearing my father say, "You're no longer our son." And I smile. Because the truth is, I was never really theirs to lose. They just never realized I belonged to myself. Always had. Always would. So, if you're out there, if you've been the second choice, the backup plan, the person who kept everything running while someone else got the spotlight. Let me say this clearly. You are not disposable. You are not invisible. And sometimes, walking away isn't the end. It's the beginning. That day I got kicked out. It wasn't the worst day of my life. It was the first day I finally lived it for me. 3 months after Leo was sentenced, I got a call from someone I hadn't heard from in years. My Uncle Ray. Now, Ray's always been the quiet one in the family, kept to himself, never involved in the family drama. He used to send me old records on my birthday and once gave me a toolkit when I was 16. No note, just "You're gonna need this more than you know." So I pick up, half expecting a short "Hey, just checking in" kind of call. Instead, he says, "You busy next weekend? I need help fixing up a cabin." A cabin out of nowhere. Depends, I say. Where's the cabin? He chuckles. Oregon coast, 3 hours from you. I'll send the address. He hangs up before I can ask anything else. So that Saturday, I load up my truck toolbox, boots, sleeping bag just in case, and hit the road. I'm not even sure why I go. Maybe curiosity. Maybe just because it's been a long time since someone in the family asked me for help without strings attached. When I get there, it's this small weathered place near the woods. Ocean's maybe a 5-minute walk away. Nothing fancy, just a porch that needs sanding, a roof that leaks, and Ray sitting in a lawn chair sipping black coffee like a damn cowboy. "You showed," he says. "You called?" I shrug. We don't talk much the first hour. Just work, stripping paint, cleaning out old junk. It's quiet, peaceful. Then, while we're hauling some busted furniture out, he says, "I heard what happened." I don't say anything. He nods like that's what he expected. "I always thought it was bullshit. How they treated you. You deserved better." That hit harder than I thought it would, like someone finally just said it. Plain and simple, no drama, no, but Leo needs help or family means sacrifice. Just you deserved better. Why didn't you ever say anything, I ask? He sighs, wipes sweat from his brow. Because it wouldn't have changed them. but I knew you'd figure it out. You always had more spine than you gave yourself credit for. We spent the rest of the weekend fixing that cabin up. Nothing deep, just tools, jokes, silence, but it was one of the most healing weekends I'd had in years. Before I left, he handed me a key. "It's yours if you want it," he said. "Come up here when you need to breathe." I still keep that key on my ring. That summer, I started seeing someone. Her name's Emma. We met at the shop. She came in looking for a commuter bike and stayed for the espresso. She's smart, doesn't flinch at silence, and has a laugh that makes my chest hurt in a good way. I didn't tell her the full story at first. How could I? But one night, we were walking Rusty down by the lake and she just said, "You've been through some heavy stuff." Huh. I stopped, looked at her. "Yeah," I said, "yeah, I have." And she didn't ask for the details, just reached out and took my hand. Sometimes healing doesn't come from fixing what broke. Sometimes it comes from starting something new, something that doesn't need fixing. That fall, my parents sold the house. Rumor was they were downsizing, but I knew the real reason nobody wanted them around anymore. They'd gone from the golden couple to the family no one invited to block parties. My cousin sent me a photo, the for sale sign crooked on the lawn, dead roses in the front yard, paint peeling from the gutters. I stared at that photo for a long time. That house used to feel like the center of my universe. Now it just looked like a place someone else had lived. I deleted the photo. Didn't need it. Some ghosts are better left unbothered. So where am I now? Still running the shop? Still drinking too much coffee? Emma moved in last month. We painted the spare room bright yellow, even though we both hated the color after one coat, laughed the whole time. We've got a map on the wall with pins for every place we want to ride to. And some nights, when the air's just right, I grab the key to the cabin and we head up the coast for a weekend. Just us, the waves, and quiet. Peace isn't loud. It's not some dramatic thing. It's eating takeout with someone who sees you. It's waking up without dread. It's knowing that you walked through fire and came out clean. I still don't talk to my parents. I doubt I ever will. But I don't need their apology anymore. I built something without them. And that's the best kind of revenge. Story 2. I remember the first time I proposed a quantum-resistant encryption layer at Orion Systems. You'd think I was asking them to invest in alien technology. "We prefer to keep things simple." "Mia," said Noah, our then CTO, wearing his usual smirk, "no need to over-engineer." That simplicity would cost them dearly, but we'll get to that. Flash forward 12 months. I was now Director of Security Architecture at Aegis Cybertech. Not only had my proposal been approved here, it had been greenlit in under 4 hours. The new CEO, Callan Ruiz, simply nodded and said, "Implement everything. No restrictions. Make it bulletproof." I almost cried. Not from gratitude, okay? Maybe a little, but mostly because for the first time in years, someone respected the work enough to just let it speak. And it did. Our systems were outperforming benchmarks. Our adaptive protocols were getting attention across the sector, and my team, they were thriving. Collaboration wasn't just encouraged, it was baked into our DNA. There were no 15-step approval processes here, just problems, people, and solutions. Then came the notification. Orion Technologies admits to critical vulnerabilities in the Nova Security Suite. I read it 3 times. Their newest platform, Nova, was my old architecture's so-called upgrade. I knew instantly what had gone wrong. I smirked, not in a petty way. Well, maybe a little. A week later, I got an email from Orion's new HR liaison. Apparently, They wanted me back in a consulting role during this transitionary period. They said, name your rate. I didn't even hesitate. Thank you for reaching out. I wrote, unfortunately, I am fully engaged at Aegis with no availability for external consultancy. Best of luck with your transition. Privately, it felt like justice. Callan and I sat down for our weekly strategy session the next morning. He had that spark in his eye I now knew meant, tell me something interesting. They've definitely launched Nova as is, I said, and if the structure follows what Noah once outlined, they've likely stripped out the adaptive threat learning. It'll leave them exposed to polymorphic intrusion vectors. Callan whistled low. You mean those shape-shifting malware attacks you warned about? Exactly. They think static rule sets are sufficient. I shook my head. It's like guarding a smart vault with a padlock. What do you suggest? I looked him dead in the eye. We prepare solutions tailored to patch those blind spots. If clients jump ship, they'll be looking for us. It was a gray area. Ethically speaking, I wasn't sharing trade secrets, just applying my deep understanding of systems I once built, but I knew I was skating close to the edge. Still, when you're tossed aside by people who don't respect you, it's hard not to lean into the poetic irony. That afternoon, I pinged a contact at a major fintech firm. Hey Jenna, I said during a video call, I've heard about Nova's rollout. If your team is running into friction, Aegis might have some stabilization options worth exploring. She raised an eyebrow. Actually, we are running into issues. I'll get our CIO to schedule something. 2 weeks later, they weren't the only ones knocking on our door. And then the real chaos began. Orion experienced a breach. Not a tiny blip, a full-on, gloves-off, red alert catastrophe. The Department of Homeland Security, federal clients, several government contracts, all compromised. The media frenzy was instant. Stock value, down 22% in a single trading session. I watched Noah appear on Bloomberg that night pale, haggard, stumbling over jargon like it might save him. These are temporary integration hurdles, he said, voice shaking. My phone buzzed. Raj, we're drowning. Sleep deprived. No answers. He's blaming the implementation team. 2 hours later, Noah himself called. Mia, he said, not hi, not how are you, just my name, like it held all the answers. I think we need to revisit that consulting arrangement. We're willing to be flexible. The silence that followed wasn't cruel. It was earned. Didn't you once call my framework excessively paranoid? I asked. Surely your new team can handle things. 3 days passed. Then security called from the front desk. There's a man here, Noah Greaves. He says he needs to speak to you, urgently. I felt something tighten in my chest. No appointment. No, refusing to leave. I sighed. Escort him to conference room 2. I'll be down in 5. Walking in, I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the crisp navy suit and perfect hair. His tie was askew. His eyes were red-rimmed. You did this, he snapped before I even sat. You fired me. Remember, I replied calmly. You embedded vulnerabilities in the original system. That's why Nova failed. I crossed my arms. I handed over complete documentation. Your team didn't follow it. I offered a 6-month transition. You declined. You designed Nova to fail without your systems. I didn't design Nova. You did. And you removed my security backbone without understanding how it functioned. His voice cracked. You cost us everything. No, Noah, you did that. When you called my work outdated, when you ignored every protocol marked critical, that was your signature on those revisions. He stood up so abruptly his chair scraped loud enough to make me flinch. I'm taking this to the board. Corporate sabotage, breach of NDA. Be my guest, I said evenly, but tread carefully, because every system still running at Orion still functions thanks to the backup code you never figured out how to delete. His jaw tightened. You'll regret this. I watched him walk out, security trailing close. And then, another unexpected call. This one from someone I hadn't heard from in years. Mia, it's Sabine. My old mentor, the one who'd first recruited me to Orion all those years ago. We need to talk, now. That evening, I met Sabine at a quiet bistro tucked beneath a bookstore, the kind of place with mismatched chairs, low lighting, and candles that flicker like nervous hearts. I hadn't seen her in nearly 4 years, not since she'd stepped away from Orion's board after strategic disagreements. I now knew those disagreements had names Noah among them. She looked the same, elegant, precise, like she never sweated a day in her life, the kind of woman who could outmaneuver a boardroom without ever raising her voice. Mia, she said warmly, and I nearly forgot how cold she could be when she needed to. Before we talk business, I owe you an apology. I didn't say anything, just waited. I didn't fight hard enough when they pushed you out. I thought they'd regret it on their own. They did, I said flat. She smiled, sadly, just not before doing damage. Turns out, she wasn't here for a reconciliation dinner. She was here to ask me to come back. As Chief Technology Officer. Reporting directly to the board? Not Noah. I actually laughed out loud. You're serious? I wouldn't be here otherwise. And what Noah just disappears into the server logs. Sabine lowered her voice. He's on borrowed time. The breach cost us over $200 million in market value. 3 government agencies have paused contracts. The board votes next week. I blinked. And what exactly would you want from me? To stabilize what's left, rebuild trust, rebuild the systems from the top. I shook my head. I'm at Aegis now. Callan's been everything Noah wasn't. Supportive, smart, ethical. There's one more thing, Sabine said, leaning in. Nova isn't completely online. When they couldn't get your systems fully uninstalled, they left parts running in parallel. Your original code is the only reason our infrastructure hasn't collapsed entirely. The world tilted for a second. What? They didn't understand it enough to kill it. They're calling it a failsafe, but really, it's your code that's catching the attacks. My code. My name wasn't on any press releases, but my system was still saving their ass. I had no idea, I whispered. I know, she replied gently. That's why I wanted you to hear it from me. When I got home that night, I didn't sleep. I stood on my balcony staring at the skyline, Seattle lights glittering like someone had poured hope into the dark. This wasn't just a job offer. It was leverage I hadn't asked for but now couldn't ignore. The next morning at Aegis, I tried to focus during our stand-up, but Arya, our senior dev, noticed right away. You good, boss? She asked after the meeting. I nodded, lied, just didn't sleep well. Truth was, my head was a battlefield. Aegis had given me everything I needed to thrive, and yet, Orion was still in my bones. I'd built those foundations, spent years crafting them. Watching someone else wreck them wasn't satisfying, it was maddening. By noon, I made a decision. I knocked on Callan's office door. You always have time, he said without looking up. What's on your mind? I explained everything. Sabine's offer, the truth about my framework still running at Orion, the board meeting, the breach. He listened silently. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. Well, he said, helps to know I hired a genius. I haven't accepted anything. I added quickly. I'm committed to Aegis. I just didn't want secrets between us. What if we don't frame this as betrayal? Callan asked, leaning forward. What if we frame it as opportunity? What do you mean? Strategic alliance, he said. Orion needs help. We have the capabilities. You serve as a bridge, a partner, not an employee. We help them stabilize. We expand our reach. You stay with us and shape both. It was so unexpected I laughed. You're suggesting a partnership with a company we're actively outpacing. In some areas, yes, Callan replied, but they still have legacy clients and government contracts. We have the next-gen tech. Imagine combining both. The idea settled into my mind like a lit match. A new system, built on trust, a second chance for both companies to get it right, together. That night, I began sketching it out. A dual architecture model. My old system cleaned up and modernized for government compliance. Aegis's AI-enhanced protocols layered for commercial agility. By dawn, I had a framework. But before I pitched anything, I made one move, one that would nudge the board in the direction I needed. I compiled a report, a technically precise breakdown of Nova's flaws, detailed logs, time-stamped override warnings, emails with my recommendations that were ignored, all of it. I didn't sign it. I just sent it anonymously to 2 board members still loyal to Noah. The data would speak for itself. No drama, no accusations. Just facts. The next day, I met Sabine again. Same bistro, same candlelight. But this time, I had a folder. I'm not coming back as CTO, I said, at least, not the way you expect. Her brow arched. Go on. I want to stay at Aegis, but I'm proposing a partnership. Joint security architecture, shared oversight. I lead the initiative, answerable to both boards. She stared at me, then opened the folder. As she read, her expression shifted confusion, curiosity, then something like awe. This is ambitious, she said finally. It's also your best option. And Noah? Gone completely. No advisory roles, no influence over architecture. Sabine closed the folder. And what do you want? Final authority on all security systems, equity in both companies, and full transparency. She was quiet for a long time. Okay, she said finally. If the board agrees, I'm in. The trap had been set. Not for revenge. For evolution. I didn't want to return to Orion. I wanted to transform it while building something even stronger in the process. The morning of Orion's board meeting was clear, crisp, and deceptive, the kind of day that tricks you into thinking everything's under control. I arrived at Aegis early, but my focus was miles away. Sabine had promised to call as soon as the vote concluded. In theory, I wasn't part of this. In practice, I had triggered the detonation. According to her, Noah had spent the last week crafting a narrative, blaming junior engineers, claiming Nova had been sabotaged externally. He even brought in a third-party audit firm to vouch for its structural integrity. But I'd seen the audit report. It was fluff, buzzwords and band-aids. What he didn't know yet was that some board members had received documentation outlining every technical failure, every ignored warning, and every moment his ego overrode my system designs. The plan was set. Sabine would wait for him to start floundering, then present the partnership with Aegis as the alternative path forward. All I could do was wait. Around 2:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Sabine, it worked. I stepped into a small conference room and closed the door. We walked him into a corner. She said, no preamble. Every time he tried to deflect, the board countered with data from the anonymous report. When he started blaming infrastructure, they brought up your old protocols, how they were still running, still effective. The audit log spoke volumes. And when he couldn't explain it, he panicked, got defensive, called you a saboteur. Bold move for someone who never read a line of the source code. He lost them, Mia, completely. The board voted to terminate his contract effective immediately. He left without saying a word. I sat down, my heart racing. What about the proposal? They've approved the Aegis partnership and greenlit the creation of the Dual Architecture Security Initiative. Just like that. Just like that, you'll be co-CTO, reporting to both boards. The name's yours to decide. Your system, your vision. For a moment, I said nothing. Because in that moment, everything changed. I wasn't just getting my seat back, I was being handed the whole table. Over the next few weeks, I worked like a woman possessed. The Joint Security Task Force launched with teams from both Aegis and Orion. Engineers who once saw each other as competitors were now reviewing code side by side, debating encryption standards over cold brew and pizza. We called the new framework Shield, a layered architecture combining adaptive threat detection with real-time anomaly prediction. Orion brought legacy clients and regulatory scaffolding. Aegis brought agility and AI-driven insights. Together we became something no one else could match. But success, as I learned, attracts scrutiny. Tech blogs lit up with speculation. Why would Aegis partner with a collapsing firm? Was this a hostile takeover? Is Mia Sandival playing both sides? One op-ed accused me of orchestrating the Nova breach just to reclaim power. It stung. Not because it was true, but because it echoed the fear I hadn't said out loud. Had I gone too far? Callan noticed my mood shift before I even spoke it aloud. "You're not sleeping," he said one evening after a strategy session, "and you didn't touch your lunch." I gave him a tight smile. Too much coffee, too many tabs open in my brain. He leaned back. "You did what you had to do. You exposed the truth. Noah buried a security framework he didn't understand. You didn't sabotage anything. You saved what you could. Tell that to the headlines. You don't owe them clarity, only results." Still, I couldn't shake the tension in my chest. Because part of me knew the line between strategy and vengeance was never as clear as I pretended it was. A month later, we held a joint town hall at Orion headquarters to announce Shield's public release. The entire atrium had been rebranded with the new logo, 2 intertwined circles, 1 navy, 1 silver, legacy and future, locked in sync. I stood next to Callan and Sabine, facing a crowd of engineers, clients, and a few very skeptical board members. "This isn't just about fixing the past," I told them. "It's about redefining what cybersecurity collaboration looks like." The applause felt real, the relief in people's eyes even more so. Afterward, as the crowd mingled and the press snapped photos, Sabine pulled me aside. "You know what's poetic?" she asked. "Sipping champagne?" "I'm afraid to ask." Noah spent months trying to erase your code. In the end, it saved the company, and now you're building the next era on top of it. I chuckled. Maybe I should send him flowers. "Send him a copy of Shield." She smirked. "That'll sting more." 6 months passed like a blur. We rolled out Shield across 3 government agencies, 12 financial institutions, and a major healthcare network. Orion's stock rebounded. Aegis got inquiries from international partners who'd once ignored us. And me. I got options. Equity in both companies, a formal title, Chief Alliance Architect. But titles didn't matter. What mattered was that the vision, the one they dismissed, buried, and called paranoid, was now standard across two empires. Still, I didn't forget. At a cybersecurity summit in New York, I spotted Noah across the room. Older, thinner, stripped of that effortless arrogance. He saw me. We didn't speak. He turned away first, and I felt nothing. No gloating, no fire, just stillness. The kind that comes when the storm is long gone and you realize you've survived. Not just survived rebuilt. 1 year after Vanta Shield went live, we threw a celebration. It wasn't just for the press or shareholders. It was for us, the engineers who worked through weekends, the analysts who redefined risk models, and yes, even the interns who coded like their careers depended on it. We held it at the Seattle Art Museum. Clean lines, high ceilings, abstract installations made of steel and light seemed fitting for what we had built, something resilient, intelligent, and quietly beautiful. The room buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses. I walked among clusters of people from both Aegis and Orion, no longer separated by rival logos or past tensions. That night, Callan and Sabine called me to the stage. "We have a small surprise," Callan said into the mic, grinning like he'd just pulled off a heist. "Actually, it's not small. It's about 20 terabytes worth of transformation." Sabine stepped beside him, holding a crystal award. It looked like woven threads of light frozen in glass. "We're proud to introduce the Sandival Innovation Award," she announced, "to be given annually to someone who reimagines what's possible, who sees not just systems but the people behind them." I froze. The room erupted into applause. As I accepted the award, I looked out across the crowd. Faces I'd once competed with, others I'd mentored, some who had quietly doubted me but stayed to learn. I took a breath. When I left Orion, I thought that chapter of my life was over. And honestly, I was okay with that. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that I hadn't just left. I had taken everything I'd learned and carried it into the next room. The next challenge. I paused, letting it land. We're told that revenge is power, that getting back what was taken from you is the finish line. But real power, it's choosing not to burn it all down, but to build something better, stronger, and doing it so well, no one remembers the people who tried to stop you, only the ones who helped you rise. I stepped down to a standing ovation. But the real applause came later. Quiet conversations, grateful smiles, and one handwritten note from a young developer I'd never met before. "Thank you for proving that systems can be reprogrammed, especially the human ones." 3 months later, I stood on the balcony of my new office. The downtown skyline shimmered like it was lit from within. Below, the joint Aegis Orion headquarters was finally complete, 2 wings connected by a glass bridge we jokingly called the firewall. Inside, teams worked in sync, bound by shared codebases and even stronger values. We weren't just innovating security, we were building ethical infrastructure, human-centered tech. We even started an incubator program, one that gave young engineers from non-traditional backgrounds a chance to lead, to experiment, to fail forward. One afternoon, Arya popped into my office with that glint in her eye. "We just closed the Kyoto account," she said. "They want full deployment by Q3. I smiled. "That's a win." "Also," she added, holding back a grin, "guess who applied to our summer mentorship program?" I raised an eyebrow. "Noah's niece." I laughed out loud, and she used your award speech as her essay inspiration. I shook my head, amused by the universe's sense of irony. "Invite her," I said. "Let's show her how we do things now." Weeks later, I found myself back at the bistro where Sabine first approached me after the breach. Same candlelight, same worn menu. "You've changed things," she said, swirling her wine. "Not just for us, the entire industry's pivoting." We just reminded them that security and innovation aren't enemies. I said, "They're partners." "You know, you could have walked away. You had every reason to." I thought about it. I really did. "But you didn't?" "No, because walking away meant letting them define the ending. I wanted to write my own." She nodded. "And what's next?" I looked out the window, where the city glowed with new stories. Something bigger, not just fixing what's broken, but designing from a place that assumes people deserve better. She raised her glass. "To reinvention." "To reinvention," I echoed. The next day, I got an alert on my phone. Vanta Shield 3.0 beta ready for deployment. I smiled. Not because the system was perfect, but because it wasn't trying to be. It was evolving just like the people behind it. That night, as I turned off my computer and locked the office, I glanced at the framed award on my wall. I didn't see glass or my name etched in it. I saw the blueprint of a life rewritten. A legacy not built from rage or retaliation, but from vision. From purpose. From knowing, deep in my bones, that being underestimated isn't a curse. It's the greatest permission you'll ever receive to rebuild the rules, rewire the game, and rise. Not back. Forward. Story 3. The sky opened up like it had a grudge against me. Rain slashed across my windshield as I drove up the jagged coast toward Cedarbridge, the kind of seaside town where secrets settle like mist. I hadn't planned to surprise Nolan, not on our anniversary, and definitely not during his so-called strategy retreat, but something in me had snapped. After 5 years of picture-perfect marriage, I needed to feel like we still had something real. So there I was, bottle of Veuve Clicquot on the passenger seat, heart fluttering like I was 22 again. Stupid, I know. When I pulled up to the rental house, modern, whitewashed, perched arrogantly on a cliff, I saw lights on. The porch door was cracked, and voices. Nolan's voice, smooth, measured. And someone else, male, gruff. "She doesn't swim well," Nolan said. "That's the beauty of it. We go kayaking. One gust of wind, one flipped hull, and the insurance pays out $5 million. Laughter, not mine. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. "Jesus, Nolan," the other man said. "You're ice cold. What if she grabs the boat?" "She won't. Mara's terrified of open water. She'd panic before she even screamed." They were talking about me, like I was a spreadsheet, a business risk, disposable. I left the champagne by the door. No note, no noise. Just my breath catching like glass in my throat as I backed into the car and drove. I didn't even turn the headlights on for the first mile. I was too afraid of being seen. By dawn, I was in Vermont. I found a cabin by Lake Elsinore. Off-season, mostly shuttered inns and quiet fishermen. I paid 3 weeks cash, told the innkeeper I was a writer on sabbatical. That wasn't a total lie. I had been journaling since high school. Only now, it read like a manifesto. For 72 hours, I didn't eat more than crackers. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't stop hearing that sentence. We go kayaking, and the insurance pays out. On the 4th morning, I cut my hair in the cabin sink, long chestnut strands, gone, bleached it to a silver ash blonde. I looked like someone I'd pass in an airport and never think twice about. Then I opened my laptop. Nolan didn't just try to kill me. He planned it with financial precision. I remembered his obsession with organizing our estate, his push for me to maximize our assets. I logged into our bank and found a $400,000 transfer to a shell company in the Caymans, a company I'd never heard of. I drained what I could from our joint savings, created a new identity using my maiden name, Rented a P.O. box in a neighboring town under a different alias. Just enough digital fingerprints to confuse anyone following me, including him. 3 weeks into hiding, I met Inez. She owned a tiny cafe-gallery hybrid called the Hollow Porch. She liked my sketches, landscapes of lakes, charcoal renderings of stormy trees. Inez offered me a gig curating their fall exhibit, paid in cash, no questions asked. I started breathing again. I even smiled when a local named Eli, bearded, too kind, suspiciously helpful, asked if I wanted help learning how to steer a canoe, just so you're not afraid of the lake anymore, he said. I didn't even know what fear felt like anymore. My nerves had burned out. What replaced them was sharper, like glass. A month after my escape, I finally contacted my older sister, Ray. We hadn't spoken in a year, not after she called Nolan dream husband material and told me I was just being dramatic. But this time, she answered on the first ring. "Where the hell have you been?" "Alive," I said, barely. She listened, silent, as I told her everything. The conversation, the money, the escape. Ray didn't try to justify him, didn't even curse. She just said, "Okay, let's burn him." Ray used her connections, old law school roommates, a cybersecurity contact from college to dig. And what she found cracked the surface of my nightmare wide open. 3 other women. 3. All of them had dated Nolan in the past decade. All of them had freak accidents. One fell from a horse and broke her spine. One nearly drowned in a boating trip near Vancouver. One survived a gas leak while alone in her condo. Each one had insurance. Each policy traced back to Nolan's name, not directly, but close enough. The police hadn't tied anything together. He was always just outside suspicion. Until now. By the end of the second month, I had a plan. And the perfect opportunity to execute at my memorial. Yes, Nolan had filed a missing person report, claimed I was emotionally unstable, that I'd wandered off, that I'd likely drowned herself in some kind of fugue state. Dramatic? Huh. And it worked. After 6 months, the courts were ready to pronounce me dead. He planned a full ceremony, and that's when I knew he was going to mourn a dead wife. And I was going to be the ghost who showed up 6 months. That's how long Nolan waited before filing the paperwork to have me declared legally dead. He played the grieving husband flawlessly. Interviews with teary eyes, clutching old photos of us at charity galas. She was everything to me. He'd told a local anchor, "I just want closure." I watched that clip from my cabin, spooning cold soup straight from the can, and nearly laughed myself sick. But I wasn't laughing when Ray called later that day. "He's planning a memorial," she said, "a big one, full press, catered, waterfront ceremony. He's using it to launch some new environmental initiative. In your name." I nearly dropped the phone. "You're kidding." "Nope. He's turning your disappearance into a brand." Of course he was. That's when the plan crystallized. I wasn't going to wait for justice. I was going to deliver it. With help from Ray's contacts, we mapped everything: the venue layout, guest list, speaker order. Nolan had invited a who's who of people who never truly knew me: socialites, clients, even a few of my art school professors. Ray booked a hotel in town under her name. She arrived first, checked us in, and handed me a burner phone, a black baseball cap, and a bag with the final piece of the plan. "Are you ready to not exist anymore?" she asked as she pulled out a tiny mic and a handheld transmitter. "Been training for that for months," I said, strapping it under my blouse. "You're sure this is safe?" "No," I said, "but it's necessary." The morning of the memorial, I stood by the beach parking lot watching guests arrive. Black dresses, Quiet nods, that fake hush people put on at events like this, where everyone's watching to see who's performing grief correctly. The venue was Nolan's idea of tasteful mourning, all white florals and minimalist decor, soft piano music, printed programs with my face on the cover, my favorite photo, in fact the one I'd taken just before our honeymoon. I'd edited the lighting to soften the angles. I stared at it now and felt like I was mourning someone else entirely. I slipped through the back of the house, using the gardener's gate. My hands didn't shake. I wasn't scared. I was ready. Inside, I took the hidden stairway to Nolan's study, an extension he'd built the year after we married. Said he needed a private space to process during work hours. That space was now my stage. I laid out the documents printouts of his fake accounts, life insurance policy duplications, transfer logs, and the photos Ray had collected of his previous partners, all with eerily similar incidents. And then I sat in his chair, waited. 20 minutes later, Nolan entered the room, already loosening his tie. He poured himself a drink scotch, like always, and turned. When he saw me, the glass slipped through his fingers and shattered across the floor. Mara! He stared like he was seeing a hallucination, like his guilt had summoned me. Hello, Nolan. He blinked, wide-eyed, stepping toward me. You're alive. Where what happened? I raised a finger. Before you get creative, you should know this room is bugged. Everything you say is being streamed live. Right now. To everyone outside. His face froze. Hello to the guests. By the way, I added, glancing toward the speaker where Ray had patched in the transmission. Hope you're enjoying the memorial. He lunged, but I was faster, retreating just out of reach as Ray had taught me. Let's talk about offshore accounts, Nolan, or about Lena Malkovich, the woman you dated in 2015 who slipped on a frozen trail? Or maybe… You were supposed to be dead, he hissed. There it was. I tilted my head. Could you say that again? Just a little louder? His face drained of color. The sounds of commotion filtered through the window, gasps, murmurs, someone yelling, "Is this real?" Footsteps thundered on the deck. He bolted toward the back door, but it was too late. 3 officers burst in, guns drawn. Nolan stopped cold. Mara Caldwell, one of them, asked, his eyes on me. Yes, I said, formerly presumed dead, but very much alive and ready to testify. The fallout was swift. Media outlets replayed the audio stream for days, Nolan's stunned confession. The moment I revealed myself, the sound of cuffs clicking shut. His lawyer tried to claim mental instability, temporary stress-induced delusion. Didn't fly. The financial evidence was airtight, the pattern of insurance claims too exact. The offshore accounts uncovered in full matched the movements of stolen money from multiple victims. The real shock came when a new woman came forward, someone Nolan had started dating during my disappearance. He had already started the same cycle with her. For weeks after his arrest, I couldn't sleep through the night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment, him standing in his study, eyes wide with fear and rage, but gradually, peace returned. I stayed in Vermont, bought a lakeside cabin of my own with what was left after lawyers and settlements. I donated a portion of the funds to a foundation for women targeted in financial abuse. Ray visits often, so does Inez, and sometimes Eli drops by with fresh bread and a six-pack, like nothing ever happened. Because now, nothing has to happen. I control the script. Not Nolan. Not fear. Me, freedom felt nothing like I expected. It wasn't relief or victory, it was quiet. Too quiet. After the trial, the headlines faded. Nolan's name stopped trending. People moved on because that's what they do. Scandal fatigue. But I couldn't move on quite so easily. I was still waking up in the middle of the night, convinced someone was watching me, still flinching every time the phone rang from an unknown number, still second-guessing whether this piece was real or just another illusion. Ray called me one evening as I stood on my deck, wrapped in a wool sweater, watching fog roll across the lake. "You've disappeared again?" she said. "I haven't," I replied. "I'm just processing." She paused. "Are you happy?" "I'm safe," I said. "Not the same thing." She was right, but I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I threw myself into work. I started selling prints of my photography moody lake shots. Stark trees, intimate portraits of the few locals who let me capture them. The response surprised me. One image, a stark black and white photo of driftwood tangled on the shoreline, went viral after Inez shared it on her gallery's account. It reminded people of resilience. Someone wrote in the comments, of things that survive being broken. That word clung to me, survive. It didn't mean winning. It meant continuing, existing despite. Eli stopped by more frequently. No expectations, no questions, just presence. He helped me fix a rotting section of the dock one weekend. We didn't talk much, just worked with our hands and let the silence fill in the spaces where pain used to live. Later, he handed me a thermos of cider and sat beside me on the steps. "You don't talk much about what happened," he said finally. "Most people don't want to hear it." "I'm not most people." I stared at the water. He was everything I thought I wanted. Intelligent, charming, intentional. I didn't realize until too late that he was also collecting me like an investment, grooming me to disappear the moment I wasn't profitable. Eli didn't flinch, just nodded. "You ever think about leaving this place, starting over somewhere new?" "Every day," I said. "Then why stay?" "Because this version of me was born here. I need to get to know her before I ask her to move." Weeks later, Ray pitched a bold idea over video chat. "You remember that foundation I helped launch Sentry?" I nodded. It was designed to support survivors of financial abuse, particularly in high-control relationships. "They need a new creative director," she said, "someone to help rebrand their outreach, build a narrative around healing that feels real, not sterile, not overly clinical." "You mean someone like me?" "You survived what most people couldn't, and you told your story better than any lawyer or headline did. People trust that." I hesitated. Could I really build something new from the ashes? Would using my voice mean reliving it forever? "You don't have to say yes," Ray added. "Just think about it." I thought about it for days. When I finally walked into the Sentry office in Boston, it felt surreal. Bright windows, clean lines, walls filled with survivor artwork and quiet strength. The executive director, Mina, met me at the door. "We don't need you to be a face," she said, before I even sat down. "Just a voice, one that makes people feel less alone." That I could do. I spent the next 2 months helping launch a series called After the Silence. Each entry featured real letters from survivors of coercive control, paired with minimalist photography that emphasized emotion without exploitation. My photo of the driftwood became the cover image for the campaign. It hit home in a way I hadn't expected. Hundreds of people wrote in, some survivors, some family members of victims. One message stuck with me. "You helped me understand what my sister couldn't put into words. Thank you." That night, I cried harder than I had in months. Not from grief, but because I felt seen, truly seen. The healing didn't happen in a straight line. I still had moments of doubt, still carried guilt for not noticing the red flags sooner, still wrestled with the voice in my head that whispered I was stupid for falling for it. But that voice was quieter now, easier to silence. And one day, I realized I no longer thought about Nolan first when I told someone my story. Now, I thought about Ray, about Eli, about the foundation, about the faces in the letters we published. He had been the beginning of my undoing, but they were the beginning of my return. Eli and I didn't rush into anything. We shared dinners, long walks, late-night conversations about everything except the past. Until one evening, watching fireflies from my porch, he asked softly, "Do you think you could fall in love again?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, maybe, but I'd want it to feel like this safe, simple, no masks. He smiled. That's how I feel right now. I wasn't the same person who'd driven to that cliff house with champagne and good intentions. I wasn't naive anymore. But I wasn't bitter either. I'd learned something more powerful than escape. I'd learned how to begin. A year had passed since I'd been declared dead. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was more alive now than I'd ever been. Not just breathing, but living, writing, creating, connecting. Things I thought I'd left behind, somewhere between Nolan's smirk and the cold ocean he hoped would swallow me. Now, I was standing in a room full of people who saw me not as a victim, not as a news headline, but as someone who'd crawled through the fire and chose to rebuild, brick by brick. The Century exhibit, our first major in-person event, was hosted at a Boston gallery. We called it Unbroken. The walls were lined with photos I'd taken survivors' hands holding objects that told their stories: a cracked teacup, a childhood necklace, a half-burnt letter, symbols of pain, yes, but also resilience. My photo of the driftwood was the centerpiece. Beneath it, a plaque read, "Even things broken by the tide can find new shapes, new balance, new beauty." People paused at that one longer than the others. Ray stood beside me, beaming. She'd made it all happen. Secured sponsors, coordinated press, brought in advocates and artists from around the country. "You made this real," I said. "We made this real," she corrected. "You gave it meaning." Behind us, Eli mingled with guests, somehow managing to wear a navy blazer without losing the calm, grounded vibe that made people instantly trust him. He caught my eye, raised his glass, and winked. My chest filled with something unfamiliar. Peace. Later that night, after the guests had gone and we were sweeping up with tired, satisfied smiles, Mina approached me. "We got a call earlier," she said. "Someone from the Justice Initiative wants to profile you, a long-form piece, documentary style." My stomach clenched, just slightly. "They say it could reach a huge audience. Real impact, but it's your call." I stared out at the now empty gallery, thinking of the stories on those walls, the lives behind them, the letters, the nights I'd stayed up crying after reading messages from strangers who said our project helped them leave. "Okay," I said softly, "but on one condition." "What's that?" "We include other voices, not just mine." Mina smiled. Done. The next 6 months passed like a slow sunrise, warm, steady, full of small, beautiful shifts. I split my time between the foundation and my cabin. My studio work gained traction, and for the first time, I started earning more from my art than my consulting gigs. Inez hosted a joint exhibit in Vermont, pairing my photographs with poetry from local writers. We called it Afterlight. People came in tears and left with prints clutched to their chests. One day, a woman approached me with shaking hands. "My daughter's going through something," she said. "She can't name it yet, but your photos, they speak for her." I didn't have words. just gratitude. On the second anniversary of my death, I returned to the spot on the cliffs where I was supposed to vanish. This time, I wasn't hiding. I brought a notebook and wrote a letter I would never send. Dear Nolan, you didn't bury me, you built me. Not the way you intended, not into something broken or frightened, but into someone forged, someone honest, someone still standing. I won't waste my life hating you. That would mean you still matter. You don't? Goodbye. Mara. I folded it carefully and dropped it into the sea. Let the water take what it tried to claim. A year after the exhibit, I received a call from Camden, Ray's husband. You might want to turn on the news, he said. Nolan's appeal had been denied. Final verdict, 27 years, no possibility of parole. I exhaled, long and slow. It was over. Not just legally, but truly, emotionally, cellularly over. I hung up, stepped outside, and walked into the forest behind my cabin. No trail, no plan, just trees and sky and the faint scent of pine. And for the first time in years, I felt free. Eli proposed on the lakeshore that fall. No big speeches, no dramatic gestures, just a small wooden box and a question. I want this to be ours, he said, not a replacement, a beginning. I didn't cry, I laughed, loud and real. Yes, I said, and meant it. We married the following spring. No tuxedos, no guest lists, just us, Ray, a few close friends, and the stubborn Vermont sun trying to peek through late-season clouds. We read vows we wrote ourselves. I didn't mention Nolan. I didn't have to. This wasn't about what I escaped. It was about what I'd chosen. People ask sometimes how I survived. How I escaped. How I stayed sane. The truth? I didn't. Not at first. I unraveled, fell apart, doubted everything, including myself. But the unraveling made space. And into that space, I poured new threads, art, honesty, community, faith not in religion, but in people. In the women who told their truths, in the friends who didn't walk away, in the power of speaking up, even when your voice shakes. Especially when your voice shakes. So, if you're listening to this and your heart is cracked down the middle, know this. Your story isn't over. Your silence isn't permanent. You're not weak for having loved the wrong person. You're strong for choosing to love yourself next. There's a version of you waiting on the other side of the fire. They're not perfect, but they are real, and they are yours.